Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can now hear Lucía. Very good. So we are back in Dublin. So we stay with the
Hello.
program. Sorry, Lucía, for that stress.
The audio. Apologies about this. It wasn't connecting.
So please, floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And very stressed now with the whole audio thing. I hope you can see my presentation. So what we're talking here is a little bit connected, or maybe a lot connected with some of the discussions that has been going on since we started in the morning. But I want to bring some reflection in terms of global imbalances and the problems that we're facing. Like, there is no doubt that COVID-19 have disrupted the way that we understand our society, the way that we understand our economy, but also the way that we understand how our global economy is characterized by its imbalances. So as you can see in the title, the presentation is about the reality of global imbalances and then in which way COVID-19 might have contributed to visualize them. So the picture that you have there kind of highlights that. Are we considering these in terms of the global scope and the implications? So I will start in giving you an introduction to the theme, and then we will kind of have a little bit an interaction with different economic and different COVID-19 information that there is no doubt is dominating our environment and our worlds since last year. We will look at poverty and inequality, and we also will consider in which way we're confronting these challenges. So how did we start it? So I think I try in this to kind of reflect a little bit on the nature of the crisis and also on the way that it was handled. And I will be a little bit critical in terms of the international response to it and the way that global economies that were supposed to take a leadership approach reacted to it. So COVID-19 have a kind of a learning period there because in the Asian region, they were exposed to acute respiratory syndromes back in the 2000s. So it's not that new, like, and researchers has been warning about this type of pandemic coming. We have historical records on this. What makes the difference is that as SARS erupted back in the 2003, the main effects were the Asian region. So there was a learning process that has materialized as we have experienced at the 2000 or 2019 starting point, where Asia appears to be more prepared to deal with the situation. So we know that it started in Wuhan. We know that it was communicated to the world around December 2019, January 2020. And there is where the problem started, with the disconnection at a global level, with the World Health Organization and Chinese authorities having conflicting views and having a little bit that disconnection in terms of telling the rest of the world what's going on. And then we see from the US, that traditionally has been a leadership economy, accusations like coming from the Donald Trump administration that this was a Chinese type of virus. Somehow it wasn't taken as serious because it was kind of this belief that was maybe there in the region and it wasn't going to affect the rest of the world. But the warnings were down there. Then we start to kind of worry a little bit when it hits Europe and it starts in Italy. And we saw then that there was that reaction towards, well, this appears to be a worrying situation. But again, we were witnessing what was going on in China, and no real measures were taken at the international level. And we have, again, previously that Asian experience that could be of help at the time. Then things like economic lockdowns were taken into consideration deal with a health crisis. And this was somehow a mistake as well, because the economy was ignored. There is no doubt that we were in an uncertain situation and we have to deal with it. We have to learn from it. But economic hibernation have proved to be a major mistake, because there are examples of economies, of regions, of areas that have not entered into those economic lockdowns, that have successfully managed the situation, COVID-19 spread, and so on. Then we can look at what has been the role in here. What might be wrong? Then why the U.S. maybe didn't lead as we are kind of used to see? Are there some kind of distinctions in terms of political frictions, economic power, political power, diplomatic type of approaches? And a lot of damage has been done by the populist governments that emerged as a result of the 2008 global economic and financial crisis. And we can see that damage in the way that COVID-19 has been handled. Something for us to consider is this is COVID is impacting the world economies. And amazingly, the world economies have not managed to cooperate and to show that leadership, and more worryingly, those kind of developed ones that have taken that stance previously. Then as we move towards the impact of COVID-19, we see that, again, lockdown measures, economic lockdown measures have created a lot of damage. The first speaker from the Ministry of Industry and Trade in Czech Republic have highlighted like the economic dimension of it, and still we don't know how much damage has been done and the way that these have to be managed, because there is, in that context, we don't have much information yet. But what we know is that, especially from previous crises and the 2008 financial crisis, is governments and organizations like central banks and so on, intervention is in order to stimulate the economy and to help recover has been critical. And we will see a little bit later why this is important, in which way the mechanism, the economic mechanisms that has been frozen required to be like more active in dealing with the situation. We also have problems at the moment with regard to the vaccination programs and the way that the vaccine has been developed, the way that the vaccine is being distributed, and again, the lack of international cooperation kind of emerging as a major area of concern. So as we look at some of the images, as the vaccines were announced back in November 2020, and the world started to take a little bit a more positive approach, especially the developed economies. What we can see in these pictures is that the situation was quite dramatic back in December, so that you can see here how these numbers were kind of on the top. But if you pay attention to our current figures, you can see that we have crossed that line that was very high back in December, and we're moving into very worrying numbers. And the situation is now being marked by less developed economies. So right now we have those informations back to 2020 of what was going on, because the developed economies were showing that they were hit, and then we were into that race of finding the vaccine. But now the COVID-19 is hitting the less developed economies, and there is where we won't have a lot of information, because most of those countries won't have like even the mechanisms to record the cases, to do the testing, and so on. So we won't know the magnitude, the full magnitude of the impact. You have here like advanced economies and the daily cases, and again, the worrying patterns. Even though populations are being vaccinated, you see countries there that are showing that upward trend. And you can see, again, like if we look at the case of France, you can see the line going up. If you see, again, the case of Italy, Spain, Germany, those cases are on the rise. So even though we have the vaccines, is showing as well that there is still a need of time to adjust. And even though you're vaccinating, that doesn't mean that you are just immune to the disease. There is evidence now that people vaccinated are even positive to the virus and entering into complicated situations with that. Then we have the BRICS economies, the emerging economies. And look at the situation there in Brazil and also India. India is in the media at the moment. You can see how the cases are on the rise. And this is a country characterized by high levels as well of poverty. And again, to which extent this is reflecting the reality of the country. If we look at Latin America, look at the numbers in Argentina, look at the situation in Pakistan, that's quite interesting because it kind of shows that it's very stable. But here is where we are, we should be worried, how realistic is this? Because are they really reporting those cases? Are they reporting on the deaths that are taken as a result of the pandemic? You see that the message overall is those countries now, the less developed economies, are starting to feel the impact of COVID-19, and we don't know how much that impact is. Then we move from COVID, so we're just moving into that situation. The virus is here. The virus is not giving us respite, even though we're taking maybe a comfortable type of approach because we have the vaccines and so on. But what the pictures are showing us is, look, the less developed world is not at the same pace. And we need to be conscious of that because the majority of the population will be on those countries. Then have an impact or having an insight in terms of the economic impact. At global level, unemployment levels has been on the rise. So you can see that in this graph. And you can see the case of the US, for example, dramatic rise and quick kind of recovery. One point that I would like you to pay attention is the euro area, that is this kind of purple line. And you can see that while if you compare it to the US, dramatic increase, but quickly moving down. And if we look at the situation there, the government moved after the Biden's election very quickly into a massive stimulus program, mirroring what they did back in 2008. They move on to reinforce, reactivate, stimulate economy. And when you compare that with our case in Europe, we have been into a kind of lethargic type of approach. Again, no coordination, no real insight on what is going on. And we can see that in terms of unemployment. While the other countries are showing that downward trend, Europe is showing an upward kind of movement there. And these worries from the economic point of view that we might be moving then towards those structural unemployment issues. And it's going to take us longer once we know, okay, here is the branch of the economic crisis, how we're going to get out of it. And again, we have 2008 that taught us if you move quickly and reactivate the economy, you might move out of it quickly. And that wasn't the case when you do Europe versus the US, and we seem to be entering into a similar type of road with the management of the health crisis. In terms of GDP, again, another revealing picture here, while you see other developed economies in Q4 reporting positive rates. Look at Eurozone there, look at the Euro area, we're in the negative area. I put this picture here, the global exports, just to show you as well, the comparison with the global economic and financial crisis back into 2008 and our current situation. So what we can see is that exports has been badly affected, but not as bad as it happened in 2008. If we look at commodity markets, then one that was massively hit was the oil market, as you can see here, and then aspects in terms of the stock markets and the movements from major investors and the movement in terms of capitals. And those rich investors are reflected here. There is a clear disconnection between what is going on in the stock markets in terms of wealth implication and the economic reality. So you can see things like the equity indices marking historical highs, for example, in the United States. You see here that back again in March that I was referring to, once the virus hit Europe entering through Italy, we saw a massive decline in terms of the stock markets that afterwards just recover very quickly, and since then they have been just on the rise. An important element as well is like what is going on with the gold market and Bitcoin. Bitcoin, as you know, is a little bit quite uncertain too, and an opaque type of area. And you see that is hitting like again highs, boundaries over there, and then the impact that is having then across countries, it's like very, very different. We have a situation where the richer people are getting super rich, and we have situations where, again, the poor are the ones being badly hit, and younger people. So future generations are being badly damaged by COVID-19. And this is something that we need to consider carefully, because these are our future. These are the people that will be running our economies the years to come. So to which extent maybe these vaccines that are now available are contributing them to that poverty inequality and to the economic divide that we're seeing, while developed economies might do better, and when we have the less developed economies doing quite bad. So to which extent the world might have understood that vaccines might be seen maybe as a public goods, and that the idea, as it was mentioned, and you can hear it in the media, that until we're not all vaccinated, and this is a global approach, the virus there is not going to go away. And then you can see then the waves, and this is coming from the World Health Organization, raising concerns in terms of developed economies approach and less developed economies approach. Something that I want maybe to highlight is within those developed economies, how we are looking as well to domestic inequality, poverty levels, the kind of discrimination, deprivation, and so on. And as an example, we can look again at the world's first economy that was badly affected by COVID-19, with a massive impact in household incomes. There you see that about like more than 1 billion people has been pushed into poverty, and look at the countries that are being affected, like again mainly those less developed economies. But don't forget that developed nations have also a problem in terms of poverty and in terms of inequality, and this is something that is going to impact that economic recovery, and as well how society emerged from the virus. So countries like the United States, India are the ones that are reporting the most cases. And in here again, how we look into these when we consider less developed economies. Again, is the United States really the economy around the world with most of the cases? What is going on in India? What is going in countries like Pakistan? What is going in African countries? So this is a reflection in terms of, okay, they are able to report it, they are able to test it, but those less developed economies do not have a strong health system, do not have the testing system. So again, that just raised some questions. If we look in terms of projections from the IMF in terms of the economic recovery and the potential of a profound recession, what I want to show you is like the place that China have there. Like every scenario considers that China will have positive economic growth by the rest of the world developed economies are moving into that negative area. So what do that say to us in terms of global economic restructuring, and again, the positions, the leadership positions that different countries will play as the outcome of COVID-19 that is acting definitely as a breakpoint in terms of those dynamics. So these kind of discussions and figure lead us to, okay, what has been as well the implications in terms of education, and why should we worry about this? Because education, poverty they move into a vicious cycle, and they contribute again to that global imbalances. So we can see here that education has been massively impacted, and we can start reflecting as well where in that picture we place those less developed economies, and where in that picture do we see that cooperation in order to deal with these problems. Back towards vaccines now. Who are those countries that are players in terms of the vaccines? So the developers of the vaccines are the developed economies. The ones that are ordering the vaccines are mainly the rich economies. Those that have high incomes, as you can see here, are the ones that are having access to those vaccines. Again, what that tells us regarding the future after COVID is there is, again, a kind of review of how the global economy is doing. And finally, the market commitments. So once more, you can see that high income dominating there for all those that are developing and producing and distributing the vaccines. So that again brings that clear picture in where are we placing in this discussion the less developed economies as we move into that effort to regain some level of normality. And the challenges ahead, we again, back to this picture of unemployment, where we're going to be if we look at Europe in that recovery of people returning to work and making sure that we're working together towards that economic recovery. Are we heading towards a deep recession because there is that lack of coordination, slow responses in terms to stimulate and reactivate economy? The global GDP, so once more, pretty clear that countries like China seems to be doing quite well. And China is a country that over the years, if you analyze different crises, like back at the 90s when we had the Asian crisis, back at the 2008, China is one of the countries that remained kind of less affected by them, and the government have kind of implemented fiscal and monetary stimulus programs back at them in order to stimulate and protect their economy. And that seems to be working. Look at that line there, like China is differentiated completely from the rest of the developed economies that you have here. I say rest of developed because there are discussions at the moment. People don't know where to place China, and some argue that it should be considered a developed economy that is not an emerging economy anymore. So again, pay attention to the euro area with that purple line going down, and combined with that unemployment rate on the rise, and those structural issues. And the challenges ahead are many. And again, one that I personally worry about is this issue of education, the lack again of resources towards those countries that concentrate the world's population, like big numbers there, and that where progress that was made in the past reducing poverty levels are probably being badly affected by COVID-19, and where we see like the big difference in terms of the support that we will get in our countries, developed economies, and those that are not at that level. So what is the conclusion? So we're definitely facing a situation where the world is not as the first picture that you see there, that ideally we should be collaborating, cooperating, and working together. We just have a very divided world. COVID-19 have brought like a lot of challenges, and one of them goes to the political arena, the manipulation of the virus in some instances to justify like maybe incompetent responses to the virus, manipulation in terms of restricting freedoms, social liberties, and also impact in terms of how governments has viewed or introduced regulations. That there is no doubt that some of them has been working hard to protect citizens, but there is no doubt either that some of them have taken advantage in order to reduce freedom and in order to impose certain ways of doing things that the population might not accept if we were in a different scenario. There is a clear disconnection between the way that health should be managed and the way that the economy should be considered. And we have definitely devastating economic effects as a result of that lack of connection or insight from the different areas. So to conclude and to end up the discussion, I think that we should reconsider and we need to rethink the role of international institutions, the way that governments, transnational corporations and so on engage at a global level. I put a picture there with a globe and money because I was reading recently that better wealth distribution or richer, like those increasing in terms of the super rich doesn't cause poverty. What I kind of wonder about, how is that if you have 1 or 2% of the world's resources concentrated on few individuals, like 1% of those individuals will kind of look and have the power to rule on those resources. What is the implication for the rest? Then what are the government responsibilities when we're seeing this, the reallocation of economic activity, the reallocation, distribution, and the way that wealth is considered, linking to some of the comments that were mentioned as well already, in which way this is going to lead towards social unrest. There is no doubt that this will be on the rise, violence, discrimination, social exclusion, because again, the less developed economies are badly affected. So COVID-19 has just exacerbated existing inequalities. They were there, but now they're worse. And what we see is that poorer countries has been badly damaged, and in particular, COVID-19 have a massive impact in younger generations and the way that they will be able to engage with society, the economy in the future. So what are the lessons learned is my final point. So have we learned something here? Are we considering what we're seeing down there? And are we reconsidering again our approach to it? So thank you so much.